here is the journey of most people. When you land in a new country, North America, let's say Canada precisely, when you land here, somebody receives you. That family would usually orientate you on what to do based on their own circumstances, based on what they're doing. And so for the vast majority of people, the family that receives you or the thing that the family does ends up being the same thing that you do, unless you have a strong mind of your own. But for most people, when you come in, when I came in here, with my accounting background, I already knew that I did not want to do nursing because I can't stand the sight of blood. So when I came and people would say, go do nursing, in my mind, it's like, no, I'm not doing nursing. But if I didn't have that conviction, I would go into the same direction that everybody else is going. Okay, immigrant cycle. When you land here, that family orientates you on what it is you should do. Most often, even when you're coming in as a professional, you don't have the Canadian experience that would allow you to go into the profession that you want to go into. And so you would go into a survival job. For most people, that survival job is at the call center, which for most people is a step up from what they were doing. But for me, it was a step down because I was already an accountant in a multinational firm. And so you come from that family orientates you. Okay, you can't find the job, you get into a survival job. By the time you're in this survival job, you've taken a credit card because they've told you to start to build your credit score, but nobody taught you what to do. If you don't know how to handle yourself, you start to pile up the amount of debt that you have on it because you need to pay bills, you need to take care of yourself. The bills you just start spending the money. Plus, you're now in bush, right? You're now a bush faller. So it's kind of like you have to start sending something back home. Before you know it, you're in debt. Before you know it, you ask people like, how did you get in debt? People will really have to reflect to figure out what really happened that got them into that situation. But it's just the everyday things of life. Okay, so there's that coming in, that orientation. Now you're already in a debt situation, but you're in the survival job. And now you decide like, you know what, this job that I'm at, I don't like it. For me, it's degrading. Now, most people will then say, I probably have to go back to school in order to get a better job. You have your credit card loans. You live in that job that you're probably going to add a student loan on top of it. You have your credit card, you have your student loans. And because you have a less of an income coming in right now, that too starts to accumulate onto how much it is that you actually have as your debt. Fast forward, you graduate from school, hopefully. Now you've graduated and hopefully it's more positive and you get a better job. That better job allows you to have a bigger pay. And now you're excited because you're now making much more money than you ever thought you could possibly make. Instead of people to stop at this time to think and say, how can I get myself financially okay? What do people do at that time? You've added your student loans to it. And now you go and add a car to it because hopefully by now you've also been at least paying your minimum payments, that you've built up enough of a credit score that you can go and sign a loan. And so when you sign the loan, you've added to it your student loans, your credit cards, your car. And time is passing by. Now, eventually, you decide it's time to start a family, be it pressures from home, be it pressures from society. It's like, oh, now it's time to start a family. You start a family, and your apartment now is probably too small for you. And so what do you add to that? You add a house. You add a house to those debts that you already have. Your credit cards are not paid off. Your student loan is still being paid off. Your car loan is there. You've added a mortgage to it. And by that time, you're probably close to your 40s. And you just took a 25-year mortgage. Now, let's say you're at that place and you pay it off without going to refinance and pull out money from it to do whatever thing you want to do. If you just keep paying it as you're supposed to, 25 years from the time you're 40, it's year 65. Time for retirement. Okay, in your 40s, you started having your kids. Maybe you started having earlier or like around the time of mortgage, kids and all of that. Your children grow up seeing you living this way of life without networking, without like being willing to go out of your comfort zone. They just see that. And most often that's what the kids copy as well. By the time they get to whatever age, now they want to go and start getting their own entry-level job at something so they can start making some, So that is a cycle which, without paying attention to it, a lot of immigrants are in that cycle. That's an immigrant cycle, which I said is probably going to offend some people, but the purpose of this is not to offend anybody. It's to create that awareness. So you look at it and say, am I really trapped in this cycle, and where should I be? What can I do to get myself out of that cycle so that I could actually create a life for myself? Pay yourself first. The minimum you should be paying yourself is 15% of whatever you make. So let's say, let me just use some round numbers. Let's say you make $10,000. At least 1,500 of that money should be going into should be paying yourself. And paying yourself is not that take the money and go squander it on yourself. It's to take that money and invest it in something. What most people do is they spend, and then they want to see what is left at the end of the month that I can go and save. But the point is, if I give you money right now, a use is going to come up for it. You're going to find something to do with the money. The first mistake is people not paying themselves. People say, I'm going to save at the end of the month or at the end of, like it's the last item on your budget. It's supposed to be the first item on your budget. You decide how much it is. And there's a whole long process to this. You can work from the future and come backward and like what it is you need in the future, and then you work back how much you should be saving now. But the basic for everybody doing right now, just pick whatever. Let's say you make $1,000, 150 should go into something that you're not touching. It's for your future self. And then you cut your spending. That means for anybody listening, think about how much you pay on your rent on a monthly basis. If you take home $5,000, your rent should not be more than 25% of your take home pay. And that's one area where a lot of people spend on. I'm not ignoring the fact that housing is expensive right now. Yes, it is. But you can figure it out. There are ways. You have to be willing to do it, and then you can figure it out. But for you to be able to even want to do that, it's about having that awareness, like, I'm in a hole, man. This is my situation. I want to fix it. And then you will go ahead and fix it. But most people live in oblivion. It's like, I don't care. Like, you do whatever you want to do, because after everything, it's you working the money, it's you making it. Yes, you are. But when you don't create that awareness for yourself to know where are you going, what's your actual situation, and what are the actions that you can start taking today to create that future that you want for yourself, and also creating the present that you want for yourself. If you don't do that, then you're living in denial. And a lot of people are doing that. I literally told my husband, like, we had just bought a car and we signed the car without me actually paying attention to how much we were signing for that car. And so when we actually did the exercise of looking at creating that awareness for ourselves, and I realized that I had signed a $45,000 car, I literally told my husband, I was like, you know what? I don't care about this car. I want to give it back. And I'm okay with driving the smallest possible car out there, a beat up car. I'm okay with that. We finally didn't go back to give the car, because we did that exercise and we're like, anything that we cannot pay off within 2 years is going to go. And we ended up paying everything off that needed to be paid off. We paid it all off within the 2-year period. But we had to come to that place of creating that, not caring what people say about you. Because are you living your life for them, or are you living your life for you? If you're living your life for them, then yes, you're going to make all of those decisions that are going to negatively affect you. But if you've created that awareness for yourself and you know why you do the things you do, just like people say buy a car and you're like, what for? You have the awareness for yourself. You know why you're doing certain things. You're not doing it for the appearances, and you're comfortable in the decisions that you're making. For me, I'm very comfortable in my decisions, but it wasn't always that way. It had to come to the point where I know why I'm doing what I'm doing. I don't care what anybody says about it, because for me, the reason is so much deeper to me than what any person says. So if you're listening to this and you're still affected by what people say to you, you have a huge challenge. You have a huge exercise to do. You don't know yourself. And so you value yourself based on what people say about you. And that's an empty life. I didn't need to get the car when I did. Because I was living in Montreal, I was living in Lachine. Where I was living, there were buses passing literally in the morning, literally every 10-15 minutes, there was a bus passing there. And then later on in the day, there's no hour that the bus is not passing. So I didn't need to get one. But I got one because, number one, I had the money sitting in my account. Number two, I wanted to have a car. And so I got it. And that one, I paid for it cash. Once I had gotten used to having a car, because take note, right? I came from Cameroon wanting to establish my independence. When I was in Cameroon, I wanted to buy a car and it was frowned upon. So when I came here, I think, and this is all looking back. Looking back, I recognize that the reason I got that car was because I could, and nobody could say no to me this time. When that car stopped working, it started giving a lot of trouble. It wasn't working anymore. I knew it was time to sell the car, but I'd gotten so used to having one that I couldn't go back to not having one. And so now when I went to get the next car, I was willing to only get a car that I could afford to pay for fully. And the dealership convinced me to sign a car and take a car loan. And I had a little car, and it was a really, really good, small, nice car. And then when I sold it, I just wanted to get another car that was not going to take me to the mechanics as often as that. And when I went to this dealership, I left that place with an SUV. And that was not the $45,000 car. And the dealerships keep a tab on you. They know that your loan is going to be up in this amount of time. And because of that sentimental attachment that you've created with, like, you just finished paying off this one. Now it's probably looking old in your eyes and you don't have a car payment anymore. And so we're going to entice you with a new one. When I wasn't aware, I fell for that. So my second car, once it got paid off, I got this call to, like, oh, come on, check out a new car, blah, 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 blah. I went in and I checked out the car, and that's the time I came out with a bigger car note, a brand new car that I walked out with that one. Guys, listen. When you go to sign a car loan, first of all, I prefer you pay for it cash. But if you have to sign a car loan, pay attention to the fact that sometimes it is spread over a 5-year period and sometimes it is spread over a 7-year period. A brand new car is spread over a 7-year period and an older car is spread over a 5-year period. When it's spread over 7 years, the amount you're paying on a monthly basis seems like it's low, and so you don't pay attention to how much you're actually signing for the car. That's how they get you. After the first car, when I left out with the second one, it was an older car. And so it was spread over a 5-year period. And when it started giving me a little bit of trouble and the dealership called and everything, I went in and they offered me a brand new car this time. The monthly payment was just like $20 higher than what I was paying before. And I was like, oh, it's just $20, that's okay. Oh, but that was 7 years of my life I was signing away. And so I signed it and I took out that car. But that was not my stupidest mistake. The stupidest one, that was the one after that, the $45,000 car, where my husband and I, we literally went into a dealership for this one. And the reason for that was something so silly. We're going to have our third kid, and the car seats, because our kids were kind of almost around the same age. My daughter is 10 years old now, my son is 8, and then the little one is 5. So when the little one was being born, we tried to fit the car seats in the car and they couldn't quite fit properly because we needed 3 seats in a row. But that's a temporary problem. But to us, it was a problem. And so when we went into the dealership, that's when we came out with this much bigger car that was like on top of what we were paying before. Now this is a newer car spread again over another 7 years. They rolled over the balance from the previous car into the new car. And then they apply, oh, we're going to give you a little discount, this and that. They're going to throw in this bells and jingles, bells and whistles. They throw in all of those things there to make you get emotional about the decision that you're making. And so that's how we walked out with it. But the day my eyes opened was the day when we're looking at our stuff. I came across information that to me was very transformational. And I said, you know what? We make a lot of money to be feeling like we're living paycheck to paycheck. We make a lot of money to be juggling minimum payments. It doesn't make sense. Like, something is not working. And so we literally took out our spreadsheet, a debt snowball. If your audience wants that, I could send them to them. We took out the debt snowball. We put it out. We said, this is how much debt we have. This is the interest rate on each and every single one of those debts. And this is how much we pay for it. And it shows you, if you continue to pay X amount on a monthly basis, this is how many years it's going to take for you to be in that situation. And I said, I don't want that. That's not the life. I left a great life in Cameroon. That's not what I came here for. I said, something's got to change. But only you can make that decision for yourself. And so when I told my husband, I said, I'm okay with driving a beat up car. Let's take this car back to the dealership. When you if you're in that situation and you're trying to take your car back, number one, pay attention. They're not going to pay you the amount of money that you paid for the car. Once you drive the car out of a dealership, it's depreciated. The value is gone. And so when I called them to say, I bought this car for 45, I owe 39 on it. I want to bring it back to you guys. How much are you going to pay me for it? 25. On a car that I owed them 39 that I just bought for 45. So that means if I took the car back to them, I would still owe on the car and I'm going to continue paying for it. And And that put the fire in me. Said, no, I'm going to get out of this debt in this amount of time, and I'm not looking back. And so since it's been paid, they call me like every 2 months. They say, oh, there are so many people looking for your mark of car. It's got a high resale value right now. Just come in and let's see what we want to offer you. And you can take a newer one, and it's gonna be the same payment you're having. I'm like, madam, did you check your files? Do you see that car is paid off? Do you see I don't have a loan on the car? Yeah, I'm like, okay, I'm not about to go sign a new loan. Thank you. You're stressed out about life on a daily basis, right? You're looking for something that's going to give you a little bit of excitement. And so when they call, you're like, oh, a new car is going to make me happy, and you go sign it. But what's the real problem? You are dissatisfied about something in your life. That's the problem that needs to be solved. You don't need a new car. And that applies to every single area of your finances. It comes down to mindset. If you're thinking about starting a business, just start. It doesn't matter whether you're incorporated right now or not incorporated. You can't scale what you haven't created. The biggest advice to anybody who has an entrepreneurial mindset is just start. You would see the example if anybody listening has used an iPhone. We're on the iPhone 15 right now. If they were waiting to perfect the iPhone, we would not have had anything. They gave out a version 3 that it's a toy compared to what we're looking at right now. But if that version wasn't created, then they would have nothing to improve upon. So if you have an idea, just start. And then once you start making some amount of money, you want to make sure that you're looking at, on the financial side, you have to pay taxes. Don't use all your money and think that it's yours. Well, a portion of it is yours, a portion of it is not yours. Biggest thing that I hear, especially the immigrant entrepreneurs that I speak to, that's the biggest thing that they struggle with. Either I didn't set aside any money for taxes. I didn't know that I had to pay taxes. And we're looking at their number one, they don't even separate their bank accounts. Like you're starting a business, it's not your money. If you're doing a product-based business, all the money that comes in, you have to go back and buy up some more of the products that you need to sell, right? So there is that, but there's also taxes that you have to pay. If your income is already in the $30,000 range for business income, the revenue is not the profit, just like the billing for clients. Then you need to be thinking about doing sales taxes, registering for sales taxes. Those are things that come to people like a surprise. And also, it's not everybody who is required to do sales taxes. If you're a nurse and you're doing like travel nursing, for example, you have no business with sales taxes. And so I see people getting mixed up with the whole thing, with everything. So there's always a time for you to go out and do a consultation and say, okay, either like, this is my situation, what do I do? Don't wait too long to go and do a consultation, but also don't wait too long for things to be perfect before you start. So go ahead and create the product, go ahead and create the service, and have that conversation so you at least know what direction you're supposed to doing with things. Separate your bank accounts, have a separate bank account for your business and have a separate account for yourself. If it's incorporated, then the business account has to be in the business's name. But if it's just you and you're doing the business in your basement, for example, it is a business. And you actually have tax deductions that you can deduct if you actually report the business as a business income. But a lot of people just want to hide and just do their little thing by the side, and you think you're cheating somebody out because the salary that you make from your work, you get to report that on your personal income taxes. If you have a hair business, not incorporated, you have a hair business, you're doing the salon thing in your basement, whatever money you're making from that, because you have a business operating at home, you're able to deduct a certain portion of your rent or your mortgage interest or your utilities, their house expenses you can deduct, plus all the things you're buying for that. Like those are deductions, those are normal deductions. But you get to deduct your expenses that you would pay anyway. You get to deduct some of your gas, some of your car expenses. There are things you get to deduct that also now, and I'm not saying people should go and create a loss, but if you actually have a loss, that offsets your income that you made from your job until you get to pay less taxes. So sometimes I've come across something which is called a lifestyle audit, for example. And what they're doing is they're looking at your income, right? Because when you declare your taxes, it has to make sense. So somebody who lives in, let's say there's a high-end area in Montreal, Westmount, for example. You live in Westmount and the cost of living there is this much. And the income that you're declaring every single year, even if you use all of your income for lifestyle, you can't pay for that lifestyle. They start to ask, like, how are you able to live in that place? Because they know houses in this postal code is X amount of dollars. This is how much property taxes, is how much all of these things cost there. So they would do a guess, and they send you a letter to send proof of certain things. They have 7 years to go back and look at any taxes. So if anybody has filed taxes, we're in 2023. They can ask you things from 2016 if they see something today that raises a question like, oh, let's see what happened in 2016. So, but with all that said, they're not going after the small fish, they go after the big fish, because it takes resources as well to go and start digging into those things. So sometimes, God forbid, it could be somebody who calls and gives in a tip about someone. I've seen that happen in America all the time, where people out of spite, they call and give a tip on someone doing something, and then they start looking into it. But most often it's just inconsistencies when they're looking at the tax system in the back end. It's number one, huge variations in your tax situation or your income situation, especially when there's a dip. Like if you were making 100K one year and the next year you're at 30, like what happened? There's that. The other thing is just like lifestyle audits that could trigger things like that. And sometimes they do that and nothing comes out of it. So I know of a situation where, when I was at the CPA firm in Montreal, I know of a situation where they did a lifestyle audit for a guy, and he lived in Westmount, this high-end area, and the cost of living there shows that if you don't make about 70,000 a year, you can't live in that area. And the guy was barely showing like $20,000-$30,000 in his tax returns. And the audit came back and there was nothing to it, because he was living in his parents' basement. His parents weren't charging him any tax, any rent. So he was living there for free. He's an adult, but he was living there for free. He didn't have a car. He could drive his parents' cars when he needed to. And like, so all of that, like, oh, okay, now it makes sense. When they look at those things, if they don't see the extra income that's supposed to show there, then they might look at it and say, okay, what about your debt situation? Where is it the debt that was able to fund this lifestyle? And so they look at lots of different areas to make sense of it. So it's a stretch, but it's possible that they could find out if they wanted to. Don't you want the world to know about your talent? Don't you want to expand? Don't you want to be the next, I don't know, the hairdresser of Kim Kardashian, for example? If you're that level of talent. But if you're hiding in your basement, then how do people get to know that you can do that? Like you're stopping yourself from creating the greatness that you could create in the world because you're trying to hide income. The world is your oyster. Go and paint. You can do anything that you set your mind to do. You just believe in yourself and go do it.